Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. How do you do your planning, and how often? I find that quarterly planning works best. And creating time the first week of each quarter to do it makes it an easy habit to follow. The 12-week year is a time management book based on the same principles as Profit First, which is Parkinson's Law. Resources expand so as to use them all up, whether it's time or money. That's why creating constraints helps us to get things done faster. Let's face it, the first quarter is over. How are you doing on those yearly goals? Do you even remember them? Having a shorter time frame helps to keep focus and action going. That's our topic today with Gwen Bortner. She was on episode 63 to talk about how to create systems in your business and is now back to share one for goal setting. Gwen Bortner is a business owner, consultant, speaker, and trainer for the past 35 years. Over the years, she has owned multiple consulting companies, worked as a consultant for Ernst & Young, ran the IT department for a regional phone company, and became a sought-after instructor on the national knitting circuit. As a natural educator, regardless of the role she is in, she approaches nearly every situation as an opportunity to share knowledge and learn in the process. Gwen describes herself as the operational strategist, with a focus on improved business operations using her GEARS framework and leveraging her breadth of expertise. Gwen works with coaches and consultants who want to build capacity to create sustainable, scalable, or sellable businesses. Let's meet Gwen. Welcome back to the Profit Answer Man, Gwen Bortner. It's great to have you join us again.
I am so glad that you invited me back. I always love being on the podcast with you. We have great conversations.
That we do. So just remind everyone a little bit about you and your business.
So my business primarily is working with entrepreneurs. I mostly work with coaches and consultants, but I work with a variety of entrepreneurs who have gotten stuck in some place. They typically are really great visionaries and they have all sorts of ideas, but getting those ideas turned into practical applications sometimes doesn't go quite as well as they would like. And so one of the ways I describe myself is a fractional COO, but I've also recently started using the descriptor of a operational strategist. So that taking all of that wonderful visionary strategy and actually converting it into a practical, tactical, operational plan and helping them figure out how to make that happen.
I'm sure you've read EOS and Traction.
Absolutely. Huge. Of course.
Well, and so what you're talking, I mean, because it's the visionary and
it's the visionary and the integrator. Absolutely. And I really fill that integrator role for these, smaller entrepreneurial businesses that are almost always driven by a really great, strong visionary.
It's funny because I always thought the visionary was the one who was the most, what's the right word? Hard to find. But the reality is integrators are much harder to find than visionaries.
It turns out we are a slightly rarer breed.
And that was just kind of eye-opening for me. But now I understand why so many businesses struggle. And I'm an integrator too, so I get it. I understand how to put the processes and systems in place to get things, then just keep improving them over time. And
I'm sure that's why you and I enjoy our conversation so much.
Very much so. So today we're here to chat about planning and the importance of that and how to best do it. Because more often than not, I think we just do stuff. We don't actually stop to think, take the time to figure out what it is that we need to do, and then put the schedule together to make it happen. And I know for me, early on, one of the biggest struggles I had was I would have 15 minutes and I would spend my 15 minutes figuring out what to do. And it wasn't until I built systems and processes. So when I had my 15 minutes, I was like, okay, knock out these 3 tasks, get it done, move. And because if you're spending your time trying to figure out what to do, you waste all your time. If you know what to do because you've planned it out and laid it out and you've got milestones to hit, you just work on it and you stop procrastinating or wasting time trying to figure out what the next step is, and you just execute.
Well, and it also removes the barrier of making the decision. That decision process takes actually quite a few brain cycles. And if you've done that deciding process early, then that frees up that mental space as well.
And that's what it did for me. It freed up mental space. I could just take action.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think the question is why is planning important?
Well, for me, I look at planning for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of folks that will say that there's no way you can really plan. No one knows the future. And of course, we're still dealing with the issues around COVID and all of that. And people are like, we couldn't possibly plan for it. But for me, planning is more about having a path that you're trying to go down so that when something unexpected happens, you make a conscious choice to choose a different path or to stay on the same path, as opposed to just being reactionary all the time. So for me, that's really the bigger issue about planning. It's less about, I've got this goal, I'm going to hit this goal, this is the goal, absolutely positively, but more about making intentional choices when we're going to deviate from where we thought we were originally going to go.
So I had a long conversation with Bob Johansson. Bob Johansson's a futurist. And what Bob said is he looks out 10 years. He said, you need to be absolutely certain of where you want to be in 10 years, but you cannot be certain of how you're going to get there. And so,
absolutely.
When a plane is flying across the country, it knows where it's going to land, but it's off course 99% of the time.
Yep.
And so that's basically what we're talking about is define your end goal, have at least your original plan, knowing that it's never going to work out, but at least you've got yourself going in a direction and you've got something to work off of and to be able to adjust to. At the end of the day, we're coming up on almost 2 years in COVID. Hopefully you've had a plan to survive and thrive during this time because everyone has had to do things differently.
Well, and I think also part of it is knowing if you choose to change that 10-year goal, or in the case of the plane analogy, the plane may be planning to land in New York City, but there may be a reason that it needs to land in Chicago. And if it does, that it makes that choice intentionally and just doesn't like randomly end up in Chicago.
And that's very important, because part of that also is when you take off is making sure you have enough fuel to get where you're going. Because otherwise you won't be landing in a way that is very nice.
Yeah, that no one's really happy with.
No, and I think that's part of the problem. I mean, on the profit first side, and people don't actually plan out what they need to do financially to achieve their goals and make sure that they're actually going to be profitable, and then leave a massive amount of margin for everything that can and will go wrong. And if you can do that up front, then you have a much, much better chance of success.
Well, and that really is the beauty of profit first, is that you can build in as much flexibility as you deem appropriate, given where you are in your business growth and your business cycle and all of the aspects that go along with it. If you're in a fairly steady state, then you probably don't need nearly as much flexibility in there, because you probably have a pretty good idea of what your monthly expenses are going to be, and all of those things, and you aren't necessarily expecting new hires or other things. However, if you're in a high growth scenario, then you're going to need quite a bit more flexibility, because you're going to want to be able to do things like hire additional people or bring on additional technology or whatever the case may be.
So true. So how often should we be planning?
So I have kind of two major theories around it. One is I like to make what I call the 5-3-1 plan, which is a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 1-year plan, that are usually just one or two kind of big overarching goals, not lots of specificity around it, but that guiding piece, much like what you were talking about, that what is your where do you want to be in 10 years, right? So that big kind of guiding piece. But then as we get to that 1-year plan, what I really like to do is look at 90 days at a time, or 3 months or a quarter. I typically think of it as a quarter, because I'm much more of a calendar kind of based person. And with that, the idea is that 90 days or a quarter is enough time to get something done, but not so long that it becomes overwhelming. And it also is not so long that you're likely to get highly distracted, or that huge things are going to happen that you can't make an adjustment toward, because it's not such a big, giant goal. So I'm very much a big fan of 90 days. And the whole 90-day quarterly planning really is kind of the new black in the planning world. I mean, it's become pretty much a standard that you're seeing a lot. And from my own experience, when I really started focusing on this, which was probably 5-ish, 6 years ago, I really saw a huge difference. I was able to get more done in a quarter than I was typically getting done in 6 to 9 months, because I just said, this is the amount of time I have to get it done, and I would get it done.
So we talk a lot about Parkinson's law, right?
Yep.
Are you familiar with Horstman's corollary to Parkinson's law? I
am not. So enlighten me.
This just came up. I just read this not long ago, and look, the perfect opportunity to share. Mm-hmm. Work contracts to fit in the time we give it.
I have heard that. I did not know that was the corollary, but yes, I have heard that, and that is true in most cases to a point. There are certain things that you can't contract it down to a point, that you can't absolutely get it done. But it is absolutely true that for some things, if you give it 2 hours, it'll take 2 hours. If you give it an hour, you can get it done in an hour. If you give it 45 minutes, you can get it done in 45 minutes. You may not be able to get it done in 5.
No. Well, you could. You just pick up the phone and tell someone else to do it.
Potentially.
And you work it out that way. And I love the idea of quarterly planning, because what generally happens with a year-long plan is we set our goals, everyone's running around in January, and then February through November, everyone forgets about it. And then in December, we dust it off and we do something, which means if we just shoot for that short quarter, that 90 days, 13 weeks, and just focus on it, you have a much better chance of achieving it. And if you have a year-long goal, then break it down into four set parts so that you work on each part throughout the year that will ensure that you get to where you want at the end.
Well, a lot of businesses focus on financials for their annual goals, which is a reasonable measure for a business to be looking at, income projections or things of that nature. And the thing is if you wait until the last few months of the year to try and make those projections, often they become impossible at that point. And so it's another reason I really like the 90-day quarterly kind of time frame, is to say, okay, so how much of this are we going to try and get done this quarter? And it also helps realize that if you want to grow your business to a certain number, you probably can't do that in the first quarter, probably. And so how much of that can you do in the first quarter? How much can you do in the second quarter? How much can you do in the third quarter? If you just grow the business barely there by the fourth quarter, you haven't probably met your annual goal. It allows you to really look at it from a much more doable process and to see, are these goals realistic? Can we actually make them? And or what do we have to push to make something happen?
That makes a lot of sense. You have a new program out that you're working with business owners on how to set quarterly goals and implement. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I call it the quarterly tune-up. It's a process I've been doing with my one-on-one clients, and I've just started opening it up to the public because what I find is many entrepreneurs know that they need to do quarterly planning, but actually going through the process, especially by yourself, is sometimes a little cumbersome, can just be boring. It's easy to be one of the things that's like, oh, I'll do that later. I'll do that this afternoon. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do that, And then all of a sudden here we are and we're, 25 days in or, and it's like, oh, well, now I'll just wait. I'll do it next quarter, and then we go through the same process again. So part of the thing that I'm really excited about with the quarterly tune-up is it allows people to go through the process together. So we actually have some small group interaction and people get some feedback and get some other insights from other entrepreneurs that are dealing with similar kinds of things, but also from very different businesses. So there's also some insights that come from areas that they wouldn't necessarily expect. And we do the process together. It's designed to be 2 3-hour sessions. We do it on the first Wednesday and Thursday of the quarter, 2 3-hour sessions. And when we're done, we're done. You've actually gone through the process of doing it. And one of the things that my folks have said from the beginning is, I love that we have really no homework. We just do it as we're doing it. It's not one of these things of, I'm going to talk to you about it, and then you're going to go off and do it by yourself, over the evening, and then you're going to come back and we're going to talk about it again. It's like, nope, we just do it. And we also give time frames so that you don't sit and just anguish and noodle over the same question for hours and hours. I give time frames. It's like, okay, so answer this question. I'm going to give you 7 minutes, and you get 7 minutes. And most of the time, you can get the questions answered in that period of time. But if I let you do it on your own, you probably take 30 minutes, and probably not get a much better answer.
And that comes back to where we were before, right? The work
absolutely
contracts to the time you're giving it. So just get it done and life moves on.
And life moves on.
And that's important. That makes a lot of sense that you actually just have them sit and do it. Because most business people are too busy to do their homework.
Absolutely.
And they don't get it
absolutely.
done.
Yeah. I mean, because all of the other busyness of running and owning our businesses ends up taking precedence. And we're not good about doing the stuff that we know we need to do for ourselves, but don't necessarily take the time to do.
So do they have to pre-prepare for those 2 sessions?
Almost nothing. Almost nothing. We have them gather a little bit of information just so they have it handy. And I usually give them a worksheet that I recommend they do, but it's one of those, like, if you haven't done it, it's not going to be the end of the world. If you have, it'll probably be a little bit better. But really, I give them almost zero homework beforehand. It's really about coming and being present and doing the work together with the group. And one of the gals who did it for the first time a few sessions ago has been someone who actually does her planning really faithful. She says, I've always been good. I never miss my quarterly planning. I always have my goals and I follow them. I'm really, strict with myself about it. But her first comment was, this is so much better doing it with a group of people because of getting the feedback, having the interaction, being able to ask questions of other people and say, what do you think about this? Or, get opinions. And so she said, even though I've always been good about doing it, she says, this way is so much better.
So is this in person, virtual? How does that all work?
So it is live virtually. So we do it as a live session, but it's all done virtually. So I've got people from all over the United States. I've got a few people up in Canada. I even have someone from Germany that joins us. So it's all over. So, and that's part of the power of it is there's, folks that are meeting one another that wouldn't necessarily ever come across one another otherwise. But we do it live. And so it's not recorded. It's not something we do afterwards because I actually believe a lot of the power of the process is the interaction that we do throughout the process. There's several different times each day that we do some small group interactions, usually groups of 2 to 4, having some conversation about whatever the question was or whatever they're looking at or whatever the topic is at the moment.
And that makes a lot of sense. And having the group, I find when other people are talking, it kind of gets the juices flowing and allows you to see things or try things, or even if they're a lot of times it helps to say no, right? So if I'm listening to this group and they're like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do, I'm like, no, like, I don't want to do those things. Like and when you start saying no to things, it actually helps you to be much more focused. And that's a big part of it too. It's not just the yeses, it's the no's, I think, are just as important.
Well, and the other thing that my folks have commented on multiple times is that someone who's not overly familiar with them and their business and all of the rest of it can see things in a completely different point of view. And so often a person who's coming with, kind of no preconceived notions about what I'm saying my goals and my expectations are will just say, so what about blah, 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 and they'll bring a question that no one else would have ever thought to ask because they're looking at it from a completely different point of view. And that insight is often where a lot of the really rich value turns out to be from.
So I'm assuming they're sharing what they're doing with each other then.
They are. There's various pieces. One of the things is that's a little different from my process is I actually spend most of the first day doing review. So we actually are looking back at the previous 90 days and saying, what went well, what didn't go well. And so there's a lot of conversation around that. And then the second day is really when we start focusing much more on the planning of based on what we learned from the last 90 days and where we think we want to be going, what do we want to be doing? What are the actions that we want to be taking?
What about accountability? How does that all fit into this?
So I am a huge believer in accountability, and I'm a huge believer in what I would call outside accountability, meaning most entrepreneurs say, "Oh, I'm really accountable. I get all the stuff done." And it's like, yeah. We all get a lot of stuff done. If we weren't self-starters, we couldn't be entrepreneurs. That's just pretty much a given. But the question I always ask is, are we all doing the right things? Are we doing the things that we really need to be doing? And so to me, outside accountability is someone else who's going to ask you the question, hey, did you do the thing that you really said you needed to do? Or did you do all the things that you should do, or that were fun to do, or were the easy things to do? And so part of my quarterly tune-up process is it includes a form of email accountability every week for the 13 weeks of the quarter. And as part of the planning process, you lay out what are some of the key milestones, key events, key goals that you're wanting to achieve during the 13 weeks. And we lay that out in a document ahead of time for you so that we don't lose track of that. You can change it at any point in time. It's not in stone, but it allows you to be looking and saying, oh yeah, this was the thing that I was planning on trying to get done this week, and not letting it just slip to the end of the 90 days. Because just as you described, at the end of the year, all of a sudden people are trying to make all their goals starting in November. It also has the same thing with 90 days. This allows us to really be looking at it week by week by week. And in process, then I also give a little bit of feedback. So there's a little bit of micro coaching that comes along with that as well.
Is there anything else people should know about this that you haven't had a chance to share yet?
I don't think so. I have to say, after every session, I have just had so much fun with everybody, and it's one of the things that I enjoy doing. I love actually helping people plan, but what really gives me the thrill is that all of the people that are on the process are also like, this was really fun. We had a really good time. Time went really fast. And they all feel like they've got a plan that they can actually work. Because that's, for me, probably my biggest driver is I'm very much about, let's not just make big, giant plans. Let's make plans that we can actually achieve, that's going to truly move us forward, instead of just making us feel like a failure and defeated. Because I think that's one of the things that happens to a lot of folks as they start doing planning. It's like, I'm going to make $1 million this year. And it's like, are you really, are you really motivated to do that? Is that really what you want to do?
Well, and that begs the question which comes up, okay, you're going to make $1 million. What steps do you have to take to achieve that result?
Well, and for me, the question that I ask that's a little slightly different question is, why is that actually important to you? Because for me, the motivation to do the thing has to be greater than the effort it is to actually get the thing done. And so a lot of times we set these giant goals because society has said we're supposed to have them, or it's in the world of the shoulds, right? We should do this. This is what we want. We should grow our business. Do you actually need to grow your business? Is your business doing what you want it to do and creating a lifestyle that makes you happy? Maybe you don't need to grow your business. Maybe what you need to do is maintain your business and have it be really successful. And so that, to me, is a big driver in my process.
I think a lot of people struggle with that one because we're constantly told, grow, 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 grow. I know for me, I'm really not looking to grow my business in 2022. And I'm looking to maintain my business by working less. So how do I put less time and effort and maintain it? So I'm going the opposite direction.
Yeah, and see, that's a great goal, and it's great to know that's what it is, because it also means that you're going to be making different choices in what your activities are. You've mentioned a couple times about delegating, that kind of a thing. I'm guessing that there's more delegation in in your to-do list to do more and get more efficient in your delegating, because that's one of the easiest ways to reduce your hours.
There's more delegating, and then there's more standardization in the systems that I use. So I'll still customize to each client, but I want last year we had too many people on a couple too many systems. And so I would always have to remember, oh, they're here, or oh, that's there. And I didn't always have the best processes to keep track of everything in a perfectly organized fashion. So this year, I literally redid each client, and we've got the Excel sheets ready to roll. And then the first Excel sheet has got all of the things that I'm constantly asked that I've got to go scrolling to find is now in one easy to find place. And I don't have to think about it anymore. I know it's taking all the thinking out of each client and putting down the things that I'm supposed to remember in one place so I don't have to remember them. So it's saving time.
Yeah, no, that makes huge sense. And it's a perfect example of setting goals that are actually and putting activities in place that are actually leading to the goals that you're really looking to achieve for the reason that you really want to achieve them.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very intentional. My whole business was built reverse engineered based on what I wanted and all the different outcomes that I was looking for. And so it's doing that. It takes time, but you'll get there.
Yeah, no, it does. It does take time, but I really do think that when you work at goal setting with that level of intention of not just doing because you think it's the thing you're supposed to do, and that's why I spend quite a bit of time really asking those kind of questions, so that when we start setting up the activities, they really are the activities that we are able to do and are motivated to do, because we're really motivated for the result, not just looking for a result that we think we're supposed to want to have.
Very, very true. If people would like to find out about your program, where should they do that?
They can do that at Everyday Effectiveness, all as one word, /QTU for Quarterly Tune Up.
Okay. I will put that in the show notes and make it easy for people to click and find you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
I love having conversations with you. I look forward to the next time that I get to be on, because I'm sure there'll be something else that we'll be looking forward to talking about.
And I am looking forward to it as well. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you again, Rocky. I really appreciate it.
Now is the time to lay out everything you need for the second quarter. The more you get down and into your calendar, the better your chances of success. I find when I have a task, any time allotted, it gets done. However, when I have time and no tasks allotted, nothing gets accomplished. So get your action steps in order. Remember, you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. We focus on the bottom line. If you want a done-for-you service, you can have me as your Chief Profitability Officer, because you have your zone of genius and want to spend your time doing what you love. I only work with a handful of clients, so they get my full attention. I work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar for a good fit conversation to see if I'm the right person to support you and how I can help you. If you want to learn about living the life of your dreams, check out my other podcast, Richer Soul. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity. Profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.